Okay, we're talking to Attorney Jamay Gadula. So, some people are saying that the Zamboanga siege was the net effect, what do you expect, of a bigamous peace agreement. The current administration, knowing that there is a Tripoli agreement with the MNLF, enters into another Niño Bonito with the MILF. So, how do you think, what do you expect? Magkakagulo talaga. So, I mean, what happens now to the subsisting Tripoli agreement?
That's a good question, and precisely shows the error in trying to deal with just one group to the exclusion of the others. Assume if the MNLF agreement hadn't really given us lasting peace, what makes us think that having a deal, for example, with the MILF,
Yes.
which is a different tribe
Yes.
from that of the MNLF, will actually lead to a different outcome? I don't think it makes sense. And then you will have later on in the future other groups naman coming forward, thinking that because of the fact that they use arms, they're just noisy enough, they will be able to impose.
And then we'll end up catering to them again?
We'll have to end up catering precisely because we ended up catering.
Or to their
them.
sponsors?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and that's one thing I've always wanted, which leads to this point. I've never understood why there was a need to actually bring in another country,
Okay.
into a discussion that's just really between Filipinos. That one is really, for me, I find not comprehensive. And the one country pa na you'll choose to mediate is the one country that we have a claim pa against, which is on Sabah.
An ongoing conflict, and some people say it is an undeclared war pa nga. Sabi nila. So, what's going to happen? You have two agreements. How is that? How are you going to merge this? How will you put common provisions together over the same people, over the same territory? Paano yan?
The thing here nga lang is that, of course, Libya is trying to regain its footing after certain developments sa internal niya. The MNLF also trying to regain its footing because of certain developments within its. But as one president used to say, diba, weather lang yan eh. What happens if, for example, later on, these people regain their former strength and what have you, then we're now left with another group trying to claim that certain benefits that they had from the Philippine government, they're not being given. You'll just end up having more trouble.
Are we entering a very serious phase in our history where the specter of actual dismemberment is more real now than before?
The thing here is that it sounds again parang it sounds melodramatic.
Melodramatic.
It sounds but the truth is,
but that's what realists do.
yeah, if we don't guard this situation properly, it could actually lead to that. And we have to consider that we're in a weakened state right now. When you look at the way politics is being conducted in this country, when you look at the way general levels of trust among institutions that we have for the military, for the church, for the government, we are, if we don't manage this properly, it could pretty much lead to something not really good.
And it could be mishandled again.
There's always that possibility na
being mishandled.
being mishandled, yeah.
And there is such a thing as a learning curve, especially for an administration that, needs more experience. No?
The problem is that while yes, there is always a learning curve, the problem is what if the events overtake yung the length of time before they actually get to learn.
Yeah.
But the thing here is that we have so many examples na in our own history.
Correct.
And we should have learned from that. And the fact, ito na nga lang, yung sa MOA AD na nga lang eh.
Yes.
That should have already taught us. I can just invite the audience here, anybody who's into law, anybody who's into governance studies, just get the MOA AD.
And then
just
compare it.
In the CAB, mag-matrixing sila.
Okay.
It's almost the same provisions. And so how can it be that this is unconstitutional and this will be constitutional?
So
It
I'll
doesn't
ask
make
you,
sense.
Jemay. Okay, compare natin yung dalawa. Any particular features that makes one more alarming than the other?
Well, it's
Or
not
both are,
No, both are alarming. The thing nga lang kasi is that the other one kasi made the mistake of mentioning the term substate. This one did not make that mistake eh.
Which one? Itong dito sa CAB?
Itong CAB did not make the mistake of mentioning the term substate.
Pero although
they
the
kept,
GPP, the Government Peace Panel, says that substate nga ito.
they kept emphasizing that externally, and then also they keep mentioning yung asymmetric relations. But it doesn't really matter because what you do is you look at the totality of the agreement and see what the Bangsamoro actually has. And as I said, the characteristics and the benefits,
The attributes are there.
yes, of a state are actually all there na for the Bangsamoro.
But as a lawyer, let me ask you, why would an individual with being taught in law school 4 years, taking the bar, think up of a term called asymmetric
I have no idea.
relationship?
The funny thing is,
I mean, you're a professor of law. Please educate us.
I have no idea.
Where do you pick that up in the air, or
No, I
or,
actually
or,
was
or Black's dictionary?
No, I was looking at the definitions of asymmetric. The only thing I could look at is
Webster's?
medyo ominous to. No, the only time it crops up usually is international is pagdating sa armed conflict, yung asymmetric warfare.
Okay, yes,
But that's
yes.
the only time I've seen the term asymmetric. But with regard to relationships,
Wala.
it's something that's probably
It's
I
not
don't
in
know.
international law.
Well, it's not an accepted term that I could see.
It's not in domestic, or I mean, relations between two countries, between relations with intra-governance or intergovernance. None.
None. So again,
So I don't know. It's as if that we're being pushed into something. There's a certain inertia here. Is somebody leading us towards what? Final peace, or there's something they're not telling us?
that's the interesting thing. It's a good you pointed that out, ano? Because we have a lot of problems that need to be addressed, energy and all the
Yes,
other
yes.
issues. But for some reason, this one parang medyo is on track.
Oh, binibilisan, no?
Again, I just have to encourage the people to be vigilant in this one. If they could ask questions of their congressmen and what have you. In the end, it's going to affect everybody. If the people in Luzon or Visayas think that what's happening in the south is not going to affect them, that's going to affect them. It's going to result in more ways, economic and what have you. So the better that we be able to grasp the issue better and more comprehensively, then the better for the Philippines.
In your discussions with your other law professors, is anybody taking the side of the government and saying, no, this is going to be good. This is going to be final peace. I mean, we're going to have, the doves flying all over southern Mindanao.
Well, not in the circle of lawyers I have.
Okay.
Because it's parang sometimes I can understand why sometimes we're left stuttering in speechless about this.
Or are we giving up our freedoms because of this illusion? We're biting into this because we want peace so much. We're going to walk the desert in order to drink an imagery, water.
I really have no idea why. It's probably because of the fact that we don't really have that much respect and love for the idea of a Philippines, and
Okay.
that we seem to want to go into, as in your terms, parang doves flying. We like. I think some people like that imagery much
The
much
romance,
more.
the feeling of
Yes,
of peace.
of peace and freedom and what have you, much more than the idea of a Philippines.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's unfortunate.
You touch on something very interesting, Gemma, because if you notice, when you talk about peace and order, we put the term peace before the order. But did anybody ever consider that it should be law and order, ergo peace? You cannot have order, putting peace first and then order. It has to be first law,
Yes.
order, and then peace. But because the Filipino loves peace so much, we put the result first.
No, but we know in history kasi loving peace so much will not result in
Precisely.
the actual peace. And again, this is coming off from threats of further hostilities. I don't know any time in our history, in any history, wherein you had an actual peace coming from an arrangement wherein the other side is saying that if we do not come to an agreement, we will continue shooting people.
Okay.
I don't think that is the proper way to approach any arrangement whatsoever. And much more for the Philippine government. Why is it that it would have been good if they had voluntarily settled and said, no, we will lay down our arms, we will come to you, and what have you. But it doesn't work out that way.
We try to assume good faith here, no, Jamai? But when you try to cross all your T's and dot your I's, the IPs are complaining. The MNLF is complaining. The Filipino Tausugs are complaining because, Sabah is not included in the matrix. And yet, the entire process is continuing. This is one train that's going to its destination. And so you wonder, are they singing or are they dancing to a tune that everybody cannot see?
Yes. And the thing here is that we have 2 years left.
And does it make you suspicious after all this?
Yes. Well, because we have 2 years left of this presidency.
Yes.
And assuming, for example, that the BBL really goes into play, and so we have the Bangsamoro na, most likely it's going to, if ever they go into in their timing, so most likely it's going to be end 2015. So essentially what's going to happen is that the next president will be saddled with this.
Yes. And his hands will be tied.
Yes, essentially na. And I don't think that's
But can he go to the to the Supreme Court himself and,
Well, he can always-
and question it and says, no, I do not recognize this.
Yes, he can always do that, but as I said earlier, as we were talking about
We
earlier,
internationalize
wala
it.
na eh, may cab ka na eh. So assuming the Supreme Court says, okay, fine, this is unconstitutional, the other side could always say, oh, what happened? May usapan na tayo eh. Why are you using the Supreme Court now as an excuse? Diba? As I said, you take, this is a bad analogy because I'm using two countries and we don't want to use that kind of
yes.
But you take, you have the US, Philippines, nagkaroon ng agreement, tapos mamaya gusto mag-back out ng Philippines. Kasi, yung sabi ng Supreme Court namin, bawal. Don't you think may iinis yung US and, ba't yung ginagamit yung Supreme Court as your excuse? Nagkaroon na tayo ng usapan. Essentially, it's very simplistic. I'm sure some international lawyers will not like the analogy. But in simplistic terms, that's essentially what's happening.
I'll use a Tagalog term, no? Sino nag-uudyok? May nag-uudyok sa ganitong mga mga pangyayaring ganito eh.
Well,
Sino ang kalaban?
I'm sure a lot of political scientists, you know who they are. And you yourself, I'm sure, have your own.
No,
but as I said, I do find it strange nga lang that the one country...
That's the safest answer you can say. It's strange.
Yeah.
Okay.
That the one country that we have a claim over Sabah
Okay.
is that they're the ones witnessing pa this. I just find it... and I find it eccentric then on the part of the government na in-invite pa nila to witness the signing. So...
This is like, to be very, very blunt about it and to be very naughty about it, this is like asking the paramour of your wife to settle your marital spat. I mean, to be very, very graphic about it, no, which should not be the case, because there is something historical about the relationship between Malaysia and the Philippines, and I think if our leaders know their politics, you don't do that. You don't bring, conflict into your own bedroom, especially when this is a potential enemy of the country. How do you get out the Philippines from CAB and from BBL?
No, it's incredibly far-reaching thinking at this point na. We need somebody na, if I, for example, lalo na pagdating sa elections for the presidency in 2016, we need somebody talaga with an incredibly calculating mind for this one. And we have to consider 2015 will be yung ASEAN.
Okay.
And then we'll all have the other international agreements kicking in. This is going to be incredibly tricky for us. So one can't just say how it can, how one can pull out.
If I was going to ask you to pull a rabbit out of your hat as an international lawyer, how would you help remove the Philippines from this hole that we're digging for ourselves?
I think one of the best models that we have would be the Ramos era.
As far as CAB is concerned, and BBL,
it's almost the same principles. It's a combination of good governance. Then
one is not to pass the BBL, of course.
Yes, that's one as well. And then
Yes.
yung economic support, getting the help of the other countries and to be able to come up with further education, globalization, training, for the people there. That's why I say may pattern na tayo, but of course that's a different era. 92, 98
Yes.
is a different era from now.
But
now,
the values can be,
the
for all time.
The principles remain.
Yes.
Now nga lang talaga, it's really more difficult.